Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Gurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvadam. Om Ganana Antva Ganapati Gangavamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatana Shranvanuthibi Sida Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha. Good evening. It's always good, as I believe we all know, to start off proceedings by worshiping Ganesh. Especially because, as you may not know, before Ganesha became the Vigna Harata, the remover of obstacles, Ganeshji was the Vigna Karata, the creator of obstacles. So, if you fail to create the right relationship with Ganeshji, there's a good chance that obstacles will come your way, especially during this period that we have happening right now, which, as you may know, is the Ganeshotsava. I just arrived from Mumbai and Delhi 3 days ago. And of course, in Mumbai, as you may know, the Ganeshotsava is very popular. Up until, I believe it was 1893, that was something that was a private event, and mostly in Brahmin homes. And it was the Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak, for whom my alma mater, my Ayurvedic alma mater, the Tilak Ayurved Mahavidyalaya, Rastapet, Pune, was named. And Lokmanya Tilak understood that things had changed in several different ways, but he understood that something that previously had been interior now would be better employed in an exterior fashion. So he took a tradition and he adapted it to the conditions as they were then. And it just so happened that it was to his benefit because he was interested in working for Swaraj. He was interested in getting people to communicate with one another on the subject of changing the political system. And so he facilitated a change he didn't remove this particular niyama. A niyama is something we'll be discussing quite a bit this evening. He didn't remove this niyama, he shifted the niyama in such a way that he felt it would better benefit conditions as he found them at that time. So, really, that is the situation that we find ourselves in today. We find ourselves in a situation where all around the world, everywhere we go, things are changing. And we have the choice of simply being swept along in the stream of change, or of electing to change the way that we interact with the external world so that we can exist in the best way we can, given what's happening in the external world. The better that you are able to create and maintain a relationship with the environment in which you find yourself, and that means the environment of your organism, the environment in your house, the environment in the place you work or study, the environment of the country you're in, and the environment of the globe as a whole, the better the relationship that you establish with that environment, the healthier you are going to be. It's traditional when you are discussing Ayurveda that you take a shloka, or better yet, a sutra from one of the texts, and very commonly from the Brihatrayi, the big three Ayurvedic texts. These are the Charaka Samhita, the Sushruta Samhita, and the Ashtanga Hridayam. And you then explicate that piece of text with potentially the help of commentaries that have been created and passed down through the centuries, but also in the context of the conditions in which you find yourself when you are studying that sutra. Everything depends on being able to implement that sutra, that piece of knowledge, in the specific context in which you are learning it and utilizing it. My mentor, the Aguri Vimalananda, was very fond of drawing a distinction between two Sanskrit words that mean now. One being idanim, which means now, like now in the terms of the clock. Now we have 5 minutes until we begin. Now everything is over. Idanim. Idanim is over here. Ata is over here. Ata is now, meaning whenever it is that you have come to this place where you are, that is the now. For example, in the Brahma Sutras, the first or possibly the second sutra of the Brahma Sutras is Atato Brahma Jidnyasa. Now you have a sincere desire for the wisdom of the Supreme Reality. So it's not September the 11th, 2016 necessarily. It's whenever you open the book, not just to look through it, to flip through it, or not just to take the book and use it to keep your papers from flying away, but when you open the book and you have reached a point inside where you're ready to permit that knowledge, that awareness to come into you and be digested and then be implemented in some way. Ata ato Brahma Jidnyasa. Jidnyasa means a sincere desire, not kutuhalta, which means curiosity. Maybe I will have some Brahma Vidya now at the moment, and maybe I will do some other kind of spirituality over here for a while, and then maybe I will do something else. It's when you have realized that this is the direction in which you personally need to go, that you are ready to enter into that direction. So in the context of Ayurveda, which I am not going to limit to what's written in the Brihatrayi or any other texts, but is what Ayurveda really means. Ayuhu Vedaha, the knowledge of life, the lore of longevity, the understanding of what it means to exist in a protoplasmic form, interact with other protoplasmic forms, and try to do this in a successful fashion, whatever that might mean. So the sutra that I was inspired to come up with about a minute ago is Sankshiptaha Kriya Yogo Nidana Parivarjanam. Sankshiptaha Kriya Yogo Nidana Parivarjanam. So, what this sutra means is treatment in short, or the essence of treatment is the renunciation of nidana. Nidana is a very interesting word in Ayurveda. It means chiefly two different things. One is the cause of a disease, and the second is the diagnosis of disease. So fundamentally for Ayurveda, and this is the most important thing for you to grasp that I am likely to say in the next 2 hours. The most important thing to understand that in the context of this sutra, in the context of what Ayurveda has to teach about this sutra, is that cause and diagnosis are the same thing. The diagnosis of the disease is not what the disease looks like. It is not how the disease is developing itself in the person. These are important things. But the real diagnosis of the disease is understanding the cause of the disease. Because if you want to get rid of the disease, you have to get rid of the causative factors. If you think that you will be able to continue enjoying whatever it is that you're enjoying, or exposing yourself to whatever it is you're exposing yourself to, and really uproot that disease from you, then you are going, sadly, to very likely have an unsatisfactory experience of trying to eliminate that disease. Because if you really want to uproot the disease, you have to do that by eliminating the cause. When there is no cause, then there will be no effect. As long as there is a cause, the effect is bound to occur. You may be able to minimize the effect. You may be able to postpone the effect. You may possibly be able to find somebody who will enjoy that effect for you, though that is rather unlikely. The problem for you is that very commonly the causative factors are things that you don't really want to give up. So when we're talking about self-diagnosis, what we're really talking about is looking into ourselves and finding out what it is that we're doing and what it is that we're consuming that is not benefiting us, and how to rearrange our lives so that we are living in a way that will benefit us, even if it is not something that on the surface is likely to provide us with satisfaction. If you read the Srimad Bhagavata, there is a section in which it talks about a variety of different things, including pleasure, and it talks about it in terms of the three guna, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And when we have pleasure that can be identified as sattvika pleasure, that's pleasure that is painful in the beginning and pleasurable at the end. You go into the Thali restaurant on Dadiset Agyari Lane off of Kalbadevi Road in Bombay, which I did just a couple of days ago. And you pay, so you have the pain in the beginning because the paisa hat se nikal gaye. Naturally, this is thodi ek kshan mein bhi thode se dukh to ho jate hain. But then you can eat as much as you want to, because first you had the pain and then you have the pleasure. The rajasi pleasure, the pleasure that comes from rajas, is you have the pleasure in the beginning and the pain afterwards. So first you eat all the food and then you realize, oh my God, paisa to hai nahi hai jeb mein. And then it's very embarrassing. Maybe you have to go into the kitchen and wash all the dishes, as often, well, it used to happen in the US that way. So first you had the enjoyment, and then the bill arrived. Then you realize, oh, I didn't realize I had eaten, drank 3 bottles of champagne, eaten 4 chickens, and And of course, from the perspective of tamas, the pleasure of tamas is pain in the beginning, pain in the middle, pain at the end. Because the nature of tamas, whether it is dynamic tamas, meaning you're very active doing the wrong thing, or inert tamas, which means you lie down on the ground and have people feed you the wrong thing, either way, it's the wrong thing. So you're pointed in the wrong direction, and because it's tamas, You are relentlessly going in that direction. Even if people say, please don't go in that. No, this is the direction I'm going in. So this is the first thing that we want to think about. Are you prepared to restrict yourself in some way? Okay, if you restrict yourself in some way, then maybe you will not have immediate gratification. Your challenge, of course, is that it has been the case for a long time, but it is especially the case today. And it is increasingly the case that we are being bombarded with demands for instantaneous gratification. And it used to be that only occasionally you would get these suggestions, but now, all day long, you're getting these suggestions. And it is very easy to get drawn into that world of suggest the immediate gratification and then go out and look for the immediate gratification. And the sad thing is that this is happening to people who are far too young for this to happen to, because during this period where one is very, very young and growing, if you build that desire, that craving for immediate gratification into the organism, that is the experience that that individual is going to have as long as they are alive. Last year, or maybe the year before, I think it was last year, I was reading, as I often do, some newspaper in Bombay. I like reading newspapers, especially in Bombay, because well before we had news on the internet, we had newspapers in Bombay. And there was always some amusing cartoon, Mario, Miranda, or Lakshman, or somebody. And there were always interesting stories. And this was an interesting story. It was a very depressing story, however. And that was that nowadays, children of even age 3 and 4 are being treated for eye strain, for back and shoulder pain, because of using their devices too much. Now, I'm going to ask you the question of why does a 3 or 4-year-old have a device that is their personal device? There is no need for that. If they need to be exposed to it because that's the world they're living in. But they should not be allowed to sit with devices all day long, any more than they should be allowed to sit with the sugar bowl all day long and shove it into their mouths, any more than they should be allowed to do anything that is not going to benefit them. This is what the job of the parent is. The problem is the parents are as addicted, or at this stage, of course, more addicted than the children are. And by virtue of being addicted, that's what they're teaching their children. It is depressing. I mean, I have become a Varishta Nagarik. It's a really fine way of, we have senior citizen, but that sounds like the kind of thing that mainly has to do with whether they let you onto the plane first or something. But a Varishta Nagarik, it makes me feel even better, because now I'm not Sadharan anymore, I'm Varishta. Because there used to be a time that people actually regarded the elderly as being Varishta. Those of you who don't speak Sanskrit or Hindi, that means, what does that mean? What's a good translation for Varishta? Vara means better, superior, senior, eminent, senior. Not exactly, but it comes from vara, after all. A vara means a boon. So it's almost like this person is a boon to the rest of everyone. So I'm glad to feel like a boon, frankly. Anyway, the point is that, and this is not just in my country, and this is not just in here, this is in every country I go to. Every country. I go to a restaurant, people come into the restaurant, the family comes into the restaurant, and what is the first thing they do after they sit down? They don't make eye contact. They don't chat to one another. They don't talk about what are we going to eat, and what shall we share or not share. Everybody takes out their device. Have you seen this or have you not? Everyone takes out their device. And now it's not a family anymore. It's 4 or 5 or 6 individuals all staring at mirrors. And these are unusual mirrors because they're mirrors they're dynamic mirrors that show you what you want to see. These are Rahu mirrors. So these are things, it's not just a mirror that at least would let you see, oh my God, it's true. You get the face that you deserve once you turn 50. And once you turn 60 or 70, it's even more obvious. You can't pretend. 50, you can still kind of pretend. Those of us who are past 60 can't pretend anymore. But this device, and I'm using this device, let me assure you it's on airplane mode, nobody's going to call me. But I'm using this device, in my case, because it has a phone. It's very useful. You have a phone, you have you can find out what's going on in the skies, what stars, what thing. You can use it as a torch. It's a very useful device, but it's a particularly useful device if you know when to use it and when to put the thing down. If you don't know when to put it down, it's like anything else. It's like tobacco, it's like alcohol, it's like sugar, it's like salt, it's like mirchi masala, it's like anything. Anything that you can't put down, you're addicted to. And there is no addiction other than the addiction to Bhagawan that is an addiction that is going to benefit you. And even the addiction to Bhagawan may not benefit you if you are not employing that addiction in the right way. So when we talk about self-diagnosis, the place to begin is not to start to, and it's useful to be able to learn, how to take your own pulse. It's very useful. But the first thing to do is to ask yourself, the beginning of self-diagnosis is, what am I addicted to? And we are seeing, you all know, I expect that in this, all around the world, but particularly in this country, diabetes is now an epidemic. And there are children who are 12 years old, who are 10 years old, some even 8 years old, who have the kind of diabetes, not autoimmune diabetes, but the kind of diabetes that happens when you eat too much and you do not exercise enough. This is, there's not a word to describe this. This is not a tragedy. This is something beyond a tragedy. Because at that age, when you should be being guided by your guardians and your parents to eat the right thing, to do the right thing, to move in the right way so your body will grow into a stable kind of platform so that you will be able to interact properly with the outside world, you are already in a state of substantial metabolic decline. What kind of life are you going to have? I'll tell you, you're going to be managed by the healthcare system for your entire life. This is depressing. This is a life that you're not going to be able to experience the possibility, the full range of possibilities of what you as an individual experience if at that age, or if at 3 or 4 you already have back pain, your eyes already have eye strain, and in fact, the children are being treated for sleep disturbances because they're using these devices too much. And inadequate sleep can cause all kinds of diseases, including apparently cancer. And even worse, developmental delay is occurring because of these devices. So you're taking a child who really, children, if you leave them alone, generally speaking, they will be able to develop themselves pretty well because that's what the species has been doing for the past 200,000 years. But now what's happening is these devices are coming in and they are dragging children in the wrong direction. And because everyone is doing it and because it's part of the consensus reality, it's very easy to get into that stream of experience and to allow that to occur. So when it comes to self-diagnosis, the most important thing to do is to find out what you are addicted to. And it is very easy to find out what you're addicted to because whatever it is you're addicted to is the thing you cannot let go of. the thing that you cannot let go of. Something that if you do not have it for whatever period of time you don't have it, you start to think about it. You begin to dream about it. You begin to fantasize about it. You start to read about it. You start to talk about it. It is the subject that takes over your awareness because it is the thing that you have chosen as your Ishta Devatha. The Ishta Devatha, what does the word Ishta mean? Ishta means desired. Ishta means the thing that you crave. Vara Ishta. So the thing that you most want is the Ishta. So whatever that might be, that is the thing that you're addicted to. So before you even try to get off of the addiction, the first thing that you need to do is be able to identify that and admit it to yourself. Admit that you have a problem. One of my nephews recently admitted to himself, thank God, after several years, that he has a problem with alcohol. It had to happen. He was only willing to admit it to himself after he had completely smashed up his own vehicle and smashed up someone else. Thank God nobody was damaged. So he got off relatively lightly from the court system. But at least now he finally got to that place where he had sunk low enough that he could not pretend anymore. So this applies to all of everybody, and it could be anything. It could be a substance, because Ayurveda is all about guna. Guna means qualities. And we all need to look in ourselves and find out what qualities we have. That's why we talk so much in Ayurveda about prakriti. And people talk a lot about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which is important, but it's even more important to be thinking about gunas. And they're very simple. There are many gunas in Ayurveda, but 3 pairs of gunas are the most important in the context of being healthy. Number 1, in particular, is hot and cold. Some people's bodies are always hot. Even when it's cold outside, they're not disturbed by the cold. They can generate heat on the inside. Some people's bodies are always cold. Even when it's warm outside, they still have some trouble. The circulation to their peripheral digits, the fingers and toes, is not completely adequate. There's always a sensation that they could get a little more heat into those extremities. So this is an important thing to know about yourself, and it is not so difficult. Anyone who has ever experienced heat and cold, and the climate of your area here is extreme heat and extreme cold. So it should be pretty obvious to you by this point, what is your nature? Are you more on the cold side or more on the hot side? Based on that, it is up to you to acknowledge that and to understand that if you want to be healthy, you have to figure out a way to make sure that you are warm in the winter, and not simply by eating a bunch of extra masala. Yes, temporarily this will cause more heat to go to your extremities, but it may not be good for the rest of you. Certainly there are shortcut ways to get more heat into your system, but those shortcut ways may be expensive. My mentor used to say, and we're talking about more than 30 years ago, that this is a country that runs on Ram Bharose. But he also used to say, Ram Bharose is very expensive. Instead of simply doing things right, you sit by and say, Agar Bhagwan chahe to ho jayega. But वहाँ जाकर कुछ करना है, and then maybe something will happen. Manushya yatna, Ishvara kripa. But people forget about the Manushya yatna part. Please, the human being should put in some effort. And they're all thinking of Ishvara kripa. Bas, Bhagawan, bachao, I need this, I need that, I need the other. But do something first. And then expect Bhagawan to assist you a little bit instead of sitting down, unless you're performing the Ajgar sadhana. Then do the Ajgar sadhana. which means you lie down on the ground, period. Are you hungry? It doesn't matter. You're a python. Pythons don't move. Lying on the ground. Maybe somebody will come feed you. Maybe not. Are you worried about that? No, because you're performing the Ajagara sadhana. But actually, people are not willing to do that either. They're not willing to have Vishwas in Bhagawan, but they're willing to demand from Bhagawan. Ye kis kisam ke kanun hai? Ye kaun si nyaya hai? So, the first thing is to perform some yatna, and the first yatna, the first effort is figure out, am I hot or am I cold? And if I am, one way or the other, what can I do that is not going to be detrimental to me, that is going to assist me to maintain either the heat or the cold that I need to remain in a state of samatha. That word sama means, well, it's very much like the English word same. And it doesn't mean same, but it means balanced, in a state of equilibrium, in a state of homeostasis. So, the Sushruta Samhita, which is one of the Brihatrayi, defines health in this way. Samadosha, samagnischa, samadhatu malakriyaha, prasanna atmaindriya manaha, swastyam ityabidhiyate. Swastya comes from the word swasta. Sta means to be established in, sta tishta, and swa means your own self. If you are going to be healthy, you have to have a sense of self. You have to have a sense that you are established in yourself. You have to have an understanding of what your self is if you can have hope to be established in that self. And in order to be established in that self, what does Sushrut Acharya say that you should do? Samadosha samagnischa samadhatu malakriyaha. All of your physiological processes should be balanced. They should be in harmony. That doesn't mean they should be static. Sometimes we think of homeostasis as being a situation where things are static, not moving. This is a dynamic balance because we're interacting with the external world. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's wet, sometimes it's dry. Sometimes there's lots of people, sometimes there's nobody, sometimes there's a big plate of food, sometimes there is only some water to drink. We are always having to adapt. What we want to do is to be able to adapt as seamlessly as possible to all of these changes. And it makes a big difference as to how we interact with the world, as to what kind of changes we are able to adapt to. A good place to begin this is all too often what happens in the modern world, and it doesn't matter what country you're in, but currently we're in Bharatavarsha, so we'll talk about Bharatavarsha. Very commonly what people do is they get up in the morning and the first thing they do is they have some chai. Understandable because they want to wake up. There are other ways to wake up. But the problem with having chai, especially because chai, I mean, this is chini to dalna hi hoga. And immediately, therefore, you are pushing up your blood sugar. And immediately the blood sugar, after it goes up, will come down again. And when there's not enough blood sugar, you will not be able to think because your brain cannot store glucose. And then you will be tempted to take something else, a biscuit or some more chai or something else that will push your blood sugar up again. And then all day long, this is what's going to be happening. And then we don't expect that your organism is going to be able to withstand this indefinitely before it stops responding. And it all starts from the beginning of the day. Interestingly enough, the earlier in the day you have your first cigarette, if you're a smoker, the greater the likelihood that you will get lung cancer. Why? Because you are introducing that poison into the system immediately. So now the system has to react to it immediately. Now there is suddenly a challenge to the system. Instead of letting the system slowly accelerate, If you get into your car and you turn it on and you immediately drive at as fast as you can, your car is going to wear out a lot faster than if you let it warm up a little bit before you start to drive at a certain speed. If that's the case with your vehicle, why would that be any different than with your organism? If an athlete immediately jumps out and tries to do their sport at the top speed, they will damage something because their muscles are not warm. This applies to your organism also. You have to warm up in the morning. You don't want to heat up in the morning. You want to warm up in the morning. You want to train the organism to alter itself slowly. The more that you make things move like this, the more your experience of the day is going to be like this. The high that doesn't last very long, the low that drops lower than you know how to deal with. And you did this by virtue, part of the reason, not the only reason, but you started off the process because you started your day in such a way that you employed an external tool to kickstart yourself instead of slowly and deliberately increasing your momentum so that you could get up to the speed that you needed to be at in order to do what you needed to do. Of course, one of the reasons why people do this is because they get up late, not very long before they have to be active. If they were to get up within at least an hour, preferably a couple of hours before they have to be active, then they have time for the organism to develop some momentum on its own. But in order to do that, they have to go to bed earlier. And if they have to go to bed earlier, then that means they can't be eating dinner at 10 p.m. And then if they're not eating dinner at 10 p.m., then they're not eating dinner with any of their friends because all of them are eating dinner at 10 p.m. Now you're depressed because now you can't go, now your social life has gone to hell. Now you have no friends anymore because your friends say, you've become some sort of holy person. So there is also that derision factor. Gali sunna parte. So not only are you not eating with your friends, but inki moon to be gali sunna parte. That's also even more depressing. So then you fall back into that process of cooperating with them instead of simply doing what your body wants to do. If you want to be healthy, you have to do what your body wants to do and not what everybody thinks that they want you to do for their convenience. Maybe you don't go to bed every night at 8 a.m. and go get up at 4 a.m., though that's a really good way to do things. But maybe you also don't go to bed at midnight every night and hope to get up at 6 or 7 a.m. and have had enough sleep that you will be able to function properly. So before we even start to think about, before we even start to think about taking your pulse or doing some other kind of fancy self-diagnosis, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing that is not cooperating with my organism? If you want to be healthy, you have to cooperate with your organism. My mentor was very clear, and he said repeatedly, and it is no less true now than it was when he told me the first time 40 years ago, it is always better to live with reality. Because if you do not, you can be sure that reality will come to live with you. It is also true that almost always reality will come to live with you at the least convenient moment. The moment when you were just thinking, everything, yes, I know, I just need to do this one more thing I need to do. I need to, if everything can just remain, but But that's the moment, usually, that reality comes to live with you. When you have already overextended yourself and you're hoping that you can extend yourself a little further, that's when you fall off the cliff. How many times do you see, probably I would say at least once a week, and it will go up, that so-and-so has died because they were taking a selfie at the Grand Canyon or on the banks of Gangaji or something like that, and they fell off? Why? Was it that important? Are selfies that important? That you should lose your life? No. Are you not paying attention? You were not paying attention because you were you had been taken over by this thing. Reality came to live with you. You got so caught up in this thing that you were doing, that everybody else is doing, that you also want to do, that you get dragged into a reality that is not very agreeable. So the first thing to do is find out what it is that you require. If you are a heavy sort of person, and that doesn't mean that you are overweight, because very often you are overweight for reasons other than being big-boned, solidly built, and filled with lots of native, natural earth and water element. This is a person who has a lot of what we in Ayurveda call kapha. These people normally and naturally move slowly, think slowly, but they are consistent. They are focused, and it takes them a little more time to get some momentum going, but once they do, they can maintain that momentum for a long time. I was very fortunate when I was studying at the Ayurvedic College in Pune. I had some very fine mentors and teachers, including Dr. Vasant Lad, who since many years has lived chiefly in the United States, and Vaidya B.P. Nanal, one of the sons of the founder of the college. And Vaidya Nanal was a very brilliant Ayurvedic physician, and he was a very kapha kind of man. He was built in kind of a cubicle fashion, and he moved very slowly. He was a brilliant man, but he also thought very slowly. And there were many times that I would ask him a question. A minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes go by, and I think, all I asked him was a simple question. Could I possibly have insulted him in some way? And then I would be thinking, how possibly could I have insulted him? All he was doing was evaluating that question from several different angles so that he would be sure that he was giving me the answer that was the most accurate. So that is a person who has gravity. That word guru means heavy. A guru is a person who is heavy. That doesn't mean they weigh 300 pounds. A guru is a person who has gravity. And the reason they have gravity is because when you are a shishya, you are supposed to have the opposite quality. Lagu, you're trying to get into the adhyatmic loka. You're trying to get into the spiritual world. And the spirit is different from the terrestrial. It is not part of the earth. The earth is spiritual in its own way, but the spirit is a non-physical kind of thing. So you're trying to move in the non-physical direction, but if you want to do that successfully, you have to make sure you maintain your connection to the physical reality, because as long as you have a physical body, you have a connection to the physical reality. So the purpose of the guru, among other purposes, is to ensure that you are connected adequately well to this reality while you are connecting to that reality, so that there is a nice, organic transformation that happens instead of you coming into some kind of kundalini crisis and getting screwed up and being screwed up, or getting into some kind of Rahuvian delusion that you have gone into some sort of advanced spiritual state when all that has happened is that your Vatha has become very disturbed. So gurutva doesn't mean just having a lot of heaviness. It means gravity. It means being able to evaluate things with great stability. That is the chief guna, that is the chief quality of the earth element. Stability, stairya. So we have gurutva and we have lagutva. We have heaviness and we have lightness. And we need to have a balance between the two, just like we need to have a balance between hot and cold. Some people are naturally more on the heavy side. They need to be exercising every day for at least an hour. These are the people who have kapha kind of constitution. This will do more for them than anything else. The people who are very light in nature, pitta and vata, who are always thinking or always moving around, they need to find time every day to be able to sit, to be able to bring their energy down so that it is stabilized. Because if you do not stabilize your energy every day, it will become habitually unstable. And once it is chronically unstable, you as an individual will be chronically unstable, and then you will be taking things and doing things in order to try to somehow recapture that stability, which you will not really be able to do because you're not looking at it from the causative perspective. You're not looking at what you're doing that's causing the problem. You're trying to apply a Band-Aid to it and hope that that will solve your problem. Good luck with that. The other of the three major pairs of qualities that we must consider is dry versus wet. Some people have a tendency to be very dry skin, dry hair, dry sense of humor, dry everything. And some people are moister. You want to be not too dry and not too moist in the context of the environment in which you find yourself. If you are in a desh that is very dry, like Rajasthan, for example, you're going to have to take in more moisture and learn to live with less moisture. If you're in a place like Assam, where it's always wet, you're going to have to learn how to get rid of moisture from your system. If you are in a place that's relatively sadharana, relatively balanced, you're going to have to learn how to be less moist during the monsoon and more moist during the garmi. You're going to have to learn how to align yourself both with your desha and with your kala, both with your physical environment and with the seasons in that environment. If you do not explicitly, at least once in your life, understand how this works with you, then very likely you'll simply get into a pattern of doing things in a certain way. But that pattern may be reinforcing causative factors that are encouraging you to go in the wrong direction. Don't do that. Thank you. This is, of course, particularly true for women. I mean, it's bad enough for men, but men are just men. Women are more complicated. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's true. For one thing, men have one chief hormone. They have a bunch of hormones, but one of them is chief. That makes things easy. You either have that hormone or you don't. And that hormone either works or it doesn't. And you either pay attention to it or you don't. It's very simple. If we think of men and women, man is a very simple off-on switch. Man is either off or he's on. He's either up or he's down. A woman has about 20 switches and a bunch of dials and some readouts. And you never know exactly what's going to happen when you do one thing over here. A bunch of other things may happen over here. My friend and colleague, Dr. Claudia Welch, has written a very excellent book on hormones called, appropriately, Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life. And a number of interesting things are in that book, but one that I particularly like and I have found to be true is that men get rest through action. And women come to action through rest. Because women are more complicated. They have 3 major hormones that are working at different times. There's estrogen, then there's progesterone, then there's oxytocin. And they're always at different, this is why the comparison between men and the sun is very obvious. It's about the same shape, it's about the same size, it's about the same color every day. Comes up, goes away. You can rely on it because it's not going to change. You can also rely on the moon, but the moon is never the same. Tonight, it is Dashami. It is Shukla Dashami. But it is Shukla Dashami from the Western India point of view, Bhadrapada month. And that means the moon is going to be a slightly different distance away from the Earth. It will maybe be a little bigger than it was last, and it will be in a slightly different location, and we will see it against a different pattern of stars because it is each month the moon will be getting bigger in a slightly different place because of the way that the sun is appearing to move. So there is always a change going on with women. This means if there is always change going on in one aspect of your life, something has to be stable in another aspect of your life, or there will be no balance. That's what balancing these gunas is all about. If there's too much heat and not enough cold, you're going to burn out. If there's too much cold and not enough heat, you're going to get constricted, nothing will flow, and you're going to dry up. So, which will it be? Burn out or dry up, or find a way to be in between somewhere, to be sama, follow the madhyama marga, the middle path. So in the case of women, because they are changing all this time, they have to find a way to get adequate rest. Very difficult nowadays for a woman to do, especially because it used to be in this country that at least for 3 days out of the month, they didn't have to do anything. You could go live in the local equivalent of the so-called red tent. But that was very important because that allowed your body to rest, so then you could go back and start handling everything again. So now women are not even getting that rest anymore. So it's not surprising that their bodies are not functioning well because they don't get enough rest. Dr. Welch said that she used to be very annoyed with her husband because whenever he would get off work, he would immediately go out and ride his bicycle around or start working on the house or something. And he said, "You've just been working all day. Now you need to rest." But that's not the way men are. Men need to work off some of that energy so that they can rest. Women need to make sure that they are resting so they can accumulate enough energy to keep going out and doing and giving and acting as they need to do. So you need to ask yourself, not just in the context of man and woman, you need to ask yourself, how much rest do I require and how can I get that rest? Yes, we know you have all kinds of responsibilities, and yes, you have to go to work, and yes, there's the family, and yes, there's everybody else. But you have to find a way to get enough rest that is required for you, however much that happens to be. You have to discern how much rest is appropriate for you. You can be sure that however much that is not the amount that you're getting now, because we live in a world in which rest is not valued. There used to be a time when rest was valued. That time is over. That boat has sailed. That horse has left the stable. That car is out of the garage. We are now in a place, who knows how long it's going to take before the pendulum swings backwards, but right now there is no rest. So that means each one of us has to locate a way to rest. And that could be even putting your head down on your desk for 10 minutes and losing consciousness for that brief period of time. This works really well for me. Sometimes even 1 minute is enough. Just need to disconnect from everything, even sometimes for 1 minute, so that everything drops, and then it can It's just like taking your computer. I don't know if, do any of you use computers? Okay. I don't know if you've noticed, I am a lazy person, so I usually leave my computer on for several days at a time. But if you do that, what happens is that the OS gets, the version that has come up gets corrupted. So after a while, it will just stop working right. What would be better, except that I'm lazy, is to turn it off regularly so that it can start again and it can recompile the version that it's going to use, and that everything can move smoothly. But this applies to you too. You need to turn off the programs that are running so that you can reboot them. And sometimes a minute is enough, sometimes you need 5 or 10. 20 is more than enough. Nobody really needs ever to take a nap of more than 20 minutes until you become like, 85 or 90. Then you should feel free to sleep for 2 hours, because what else are you going to do? That's your job. Your job now is to spend a lot of time inert. In the same way that the job of a child is to spend a lot of time inert and not be playing whatever they play nowadays. I mean, 2 years ago it was Angry Birds. Who knows what it is now? Maybe it is Happy Pigs. Whatever it is. So, whatever your gender, you have to find out the right amount of rest, and you have to take it, and preferably, especially when it comes to sleep, please, 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 do not go to bed later than 11 p.m. Because what happens after 11 p.m. is your hormones start to change. And you start to kick into a mode where you are being active again. And then your body cannot rest, because now the hormones have changed. And now the hormones are telling the body to be active again. If you were already asleep, it doesn't matter, because your body is not going to take that stimulus and have it express itself the way it expresses itself if you're still awake. So, if you value your health, and I'm assuming since you're here, you at least are telling yourself you value your health, whether you're actually telling yourself the truth or not is your business. If you value your health, you absolutely must go to sleep before 11 p.m. Unless, yes, you are working on a shift, a late shift, and then you have to do something different. But let's assume you're not doing that. And let's assume that, in fact, you can go to sleep before 11 p.m. Thank you very much for doing that. This will, at the very least, allow you to get up earlier and the earlier you go to bed, the better. Because what's important is your physical body, and your physical body was engineered to be diurnal. That means to function during the day. It is not nocturnal. If it was, we could see at night. If it was, we could echolocate like bats or do something else, but we cannot. Our job was to be awake during the day and then to find a cave somewhere that we could go into so we could not be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger or whatever. So that means we were engineered to, within about an hour and a half, or 2 hours after the sun goes down, to go to sleep. And to get up before the sun goes up so that we will be prepared for whatever we need to do during the day. This is the completely normal way of doing things. We understand you may not be able to get to sleep by 8 p.m., but at least you can make it to sleep by 11. Thank you for doing that. If you do nothing else, nothing else, make sure that you turn off your device. No, do not turn it on airplane mode. Yes, this is on airplane mode because I still want to know what time it is. Now I know what time it is. If you want to be healthy, turn off your device at least for half an hour a day. Oh my God, half an hour. Okay, half an hour is a long time. At least for 10 minutes, 3 times a day. That adds up to half an hour, in case math is not one of your strong suits. A friend of mine who I met in 1974 when he was doing his MA in Sanskrit at Deccan College in Pune, and who has since more than 20 years been a professor of Sanskrit and Indian religion at the University of Iowa, and has spent a good amount of time in India, was up in Uttarakhand last year and came across a sadhu. And the sadhu was very depressed. And he said, "Sadhu Maharaj, you're very depressed. Kya hua?" And the sadhu said, "I've lost my phone." Okay. I mean, right away, this made him depressed. Because if you're a sadhu, you're supposed to be dead to the world. So if you have a phone, wah wah. If you don't have a phone, fear to be wah wah. Because you should not care. But why was he, then, obviously, now you have to ask, why are you depressed? Because while I had my phone, every 15 minutes, I could check Facebook to see what my friends were doing. What? Meaning, kya? Did I hear you correctly? So, reality came to live with this poor sadhu. The reality that जब मरने का समय आ जाएगा तेरे फोन तो तेरे पास तो आएंगे नहीं है. Nothing will come with you. मुट्ठी बंद कर आए थे और हाथ पसेरे जाओगे. I don't know, have any of you ever seen Beju Baura? How many of you seen Beju Baura? Okay, please go watch it. It is a great movie. It has great music in it. And it has a great story to it as well. So, you come into this world in one way, but when you go, your hand is going to be open. There will be nothing going along with you. Nothing. And this is depressing because here's someone who identifies himself as a sadhu, who has also become addicted to this device. This is a very serious device. This is worse than sugar. This is worse than heroin. This is worse than tobacco, which are all very addictive things, because it offers you something more than all those things. It offers you the illusion of, well, all kinds of illusions is what it offers. And that's the world we live in. We live in a world of illusion. We live in Rahu world, because that's what Rahu is all about. Rahu is a chaya graha. Chaya means shadow, but chaya means many things. These are all shadows that we have. These are colorful shadows, they're meaningful shadows, but they're still shadows. They're still things that are only meaningful to the degree that they are causing us to interpret their meaning in a particular way. So, turn off your device at least half an hour a day. Some horrible percentage of young people in the United States sleep with their phones not next to their heads, that's bad enough, but under their pillows. So they will not miss anything. Very depressing. Turn off especially your devices at night, because many of them have blue LEDs, and blue light is very disturbing to your hormones. And I can't remember the website, but there's probably more than one, but your computer screen at night also needs to change its color so that you're not getting blue light at night. You can download something free. I did it. I can't remember the name of it. So that the screen will be a warmer, less blue color, so it will not be damaging. Sometimes even eye damage occurs from this. So there are all kinds of things that we're being damaged in all sorts of ways we have no clue about, because we have no clue about it. So you need to be looking at all the different possible things that you're doing and asking yourself, is this thing benefiting me? Is it not benefiting me? And if it's not benefiting me, how can I minimize it? And once you have looked at all these things that you're doing and got rid of the things, or at least minimize the things that you shouldn't be doing, you need to establish a niyama. Start off with one niyama. Don't do things that are complicated. Start off with one thing that you're going to do every day at the same time. It could be exercise, it could be meditate, it could be just getting up in bed and doing alternate nostril breathing for 15 minutes before you get out of bed, before you start your day. So you're programming your organism to be balanced. It may not stay balanced all day, but at least from the beginning of the day. And the beginning of the day is very much like the beginning of your life. You were dead to the world. When you woke up in the morning, it was like you had a new life. For all you know, you were dead. Okay, there might have been the odd dream, but you went to sleep and you had no clue whether you were going to wake up or not. When you wake up, the first thing, said Vimalanandaji, is you should be thankful that you're alive. Again, you have an opportunity to live an entire day, to experience whatever it is that you need to experience, to do something that potentially will be good for you and hopefully for others also. Be grateful that you're alive and be aware that you may die. It could be that day. Yudhishthira, I'm going to assume you all know who he was once having an interaction with a yaksha. And the yaksha said, King Yudhishthira, what is the most amazing thing you've seen in the world? And Yudhishthira said, the most amazing thing I've seen is that human beings see people and animals and plants dying all around them, but none of them ever believe that they too are going to die. Nobody ever believes. On the top you talk, yes, and you go to the smashan and you have what my mentor used to say was, you get a case of smashan vairagya. For a few days you feel like, really, there's nothing in life. And then after a while you realize, actually, there's sharab. Actually, there are phones. Actually, there is chini. And pretty soon you're back in the same rut that you were in, because it was only smashan vairagya. It was not the real vairagya. So if every day you wake up and you say, in fact, yes, I am going to die, and it could be today, and let me live my life so I am prepared in case this is my last day. You be grateful for the fact that you're alive. You be aware that you may die, and you commit yourself to live as best you can so that you are living according to the dictates of what you know is right, what your conscience tells you is correct. This in itself is a good niyama. Maybe you want to start there. But if you start with one thing, that one thing starts to act as a focus for you. It starts to act, instead of the focus of let me get up and drink my chai, I'm looking forward to my chai. And let me say, personally, I never cared that much for chai, but lately I have become very fond of coffee. But I make it a point never to have coffee for at least 3 or 4 hours after I've got up, because I want my body to know what it's like to be awake without anything other than water. Water is good. I admit that I'm addicted to water. Frankly, all of you are too. But this is a good thing to start off the day with, because it's very easy to be dehydrated. And I was reminded just the other day of what it's like, because, of course, everything was very nice. I got to India this time about a month ago. I was in Mumbai, and the Mumbai monsoon, unless it happens to be raining really heavily, is very convenient because, it rains, but then there's clouds, and it's nice and cool, and it's humid, and it's not. The Pune monsoon is even better. I don't know if you've ever been in Pune during the monsoon, but it's extremely pleasant. And then there came that moment when there weren't that many clouds, but there was still plenty of humidity, and now the hot sun is there, the hot sun of the very end of August. And I got out that one day, and I didn't pay attention to that, and I had a very unhappy night because I allowed myself to get dehydrated. that was pretty obvious. That was an acute case of it. But many, many people nowadays are dehydrated chronically. Not enough to really know, but enough to be obvious, but enough to have it affecting you. So it's a very good way to make sure that you're going to be well hydrated is to start off the day by drinking water, by making sure that you're getting enough water. Possibly if you don't want to have just plain water, you add in some limbu ka ras, or you do boil it with a little bit of jeera or saunf or something like that, so it has a little flavor, something that is not a dramatic vanaspati, but that is going to have that's one of those things you can take every day if you want to. You can use sont or adrak, something that is that you can afford to be addicted to, but something that then allows your body to get comfortable being awake and active before you start adding things into it. And you'll say, well, I don't have any energy when I get up. Well, if you have the habit of immediately getting up and drinking something, you may, something with caffeine or sugar or whatever, you may not have any energy because you have trained yourself to do that. But let me assure you, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's not that difficult. And no, I'm not just sitting, not going anywhere. Often the first thing I do when I get up is I have some water and I go out and walk for 45 minutes or an hour. Because if you get up early enough in the morning, it's nice to do that when nobody else is around. So all I'm saying is, please consider it. It's a possibility. It's possible that you don't have to immediately take things in, but you can let your system settle itself and become interested in taking things in if you give it a little bit of time, especially in the morning, because it's like being born. We should not be giving screens to 3-year-olds, and we should not be demanding that the organism do everything immediately once it gets up in the morning. It sounds very simple, it is very simple, but it is fundamental. The pattern you set for yourself in the beginning of the day is going to be the pattern that is going to predominantly affect you during the rest of the day. So, starting off the day well and eating well. Ideally, we would all eat organic food, and when I came to India originally, there was only organic food because none of the farmers had enough money to buy dawa. That's what they call fertilizers and pesticides and so on. Might go put some dawa on the field. It sounds so right that way. The field is sick and I need to go apply some medicine to it. But back at that time, nobody was applying medicine because there was no money. Automatically, you got food that was organic. Not the case nowadays. But even if you can't get organic food, at least you can eat food that is fresh. It doesn't have to be complicated. We have pressure cookers. You can put everything into the pressure cooker. We have flasks. I have a flask. You probably have a flask. You can cook your khichdi, make it not too thick, otherwise it won't come out of the flask. But it can go into the flask. The flask can go into your jhola, or your briefcase, or your whatever it is you're carrying around with you. And it can go with you wherever you're going. Me and my flask. And then once you get there, you can open the flask, you can empty it, and you can consume it. Not so complex. In Bombay, of course, we have dabbawalas. Nice system. Why aren't there any dabbawalas here? Inquiring minds want to know. But even if you don't have a dabba, tum dabbawala banjao. Carry your own food with you. Then at least you're not tempted to go to, and I'm not saying that there's not tasty food here, but it's always better to eat food that is coming from the home. Number one, you know what is actually in it, and number two, you have the benefit of the cook who we hope is somebody that's interested in you in a positive way. and not trying to get rid of you, which sometimes is the case. So if you only did that, and if you only asked yourself, what kind of food is the right kind of food for me to eat? Now, there are plenty of writings on Ayurveda. I've written a bunch of things like that. You can find out about them. You can examine your own self. You can find out. But even if you don't go to a big extent like that, at least eat whole grains, at least eat vegetables. Do not put in too much masala. Do not put in too much oil. Do not put in too much salt. Find simple food, and that simple food itself will act as a medicine for the complicated world we live in. According to the principle of guna, if you have excess complications over here, other parts of your life need to be simple. That's how things balance out. The more you can simplify your life, and I can assure you that things are not going to become less complicated in the outer world. If you believe that, I would encourage you to rethink. The outer world is going to become more and more complicated. That means your life has to become more and more simple if you want to balance out those complications. That's not going to happen automatically. It is not going to happen unless you actively go to do something about it. So find ways to simplify your life. This may mean that you can't do all of the things you want to do, but let me assure you that even if you live for 500 years, you would not be able to do everything that there is to do. You are going to have to acknowledge that there are going to be hundreds of millions of things that you will not have experienced by the time you as an individual die. You may as well admit that to yourself now and relax about it, because that's the reality. And if that reality is not one that you live with, there is going to come a day when you drop dead and you will still be craving for whatever it is you're craving, and that's not going to be good for you or for the people that you leave behind. So don't make things complicated. Make them simpler. Start reducing the things that you are well aware of that you're addicted to, and start entering into an agreement with yourself to do things that you know are good for your physical organism. And only after you have done this for a few months, then start to ask yourself, what is really going on with my system? Are there things that really are seriously out of balance that have not been improved by simply starting in the direction of doing the right thing and starting in the direction of not doing the wrong thing? Don't try to, because, there are plenty of excellent things that you can, for example, suppose you have heart disease that is, I can't think of the word right now, but insufficient blood going into the heart. What is that word? Ischemic heart disease. Thank you. Ischemic heart disease. That means you need more blood. Simple way to deal with that, and at least to some degree, is to every morning have the juice of a medium onion with a tablespoon of pure honey. Yes, this is not going to be not quite the same level of satisfaction as starting off the day with a big plate of Srikhand or Basundi, but it will be good for your heart. But maybe the heart disease is coming from somewhere, from a cause that you can actually address, in which case you might be able to bring it under control by another method, instead of simply doing something to suppress this symptom. Yes, it's become a disease, but the disease is an indication. It's not just a disease. It's also a symptom. It's a disease and a symptom at the same time. It's a symptom of you taking in or performing causative factors that are creating it. And unless you use that as an opportunity to evaluate the causative factors that are causing you to have this problem, all you're going to do is, yes, you've applied a Band-Aid here, but now that imbalance is very likely going to find another way to express itself, because the imbalance has not gone away. You may have supported your heart, you may have supported that tissue, that organ, but some other organ then will become the weak link in the chain of organs and the chain of tissues in your organism, and some sort of pathology will develop in that other area, wherever the next weakest thing is. So rather than simply look around for things that you can do or things that you can take for whatever symptom you have right now, it's much better if you take that symptom and try to find out where that problem came from and try to address at least one of the causes of that problem, and then see how that changes you as an individual. Not just how it addresses that symptom or that roga, that disease, but how it changes you as a personality. How it makes you feel that now you have that you are actively doing something positive for you, that there is a certain greater degree of influence that you have over your existence. One of the pernicious qualities of the modern world is that, I mean, it's bad enough that we have everybody trying to extract all of our personal data all the time. And they're all doing it with a variety of different techniques. In the United States, we speak of the most important actors in this way are the Frightful Five. The Frightful Five being, of course, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Google, otherwise known as Alphabet. Stupid name, Alphabet. Why not call it something even more stupid, like grape scissors? At least that would be, you would remember it. It's like Alphabet. Anyway, these are the five, these are for the immediate future, these five gigantoids are going to be running the awareness of the majority of the world. More than 20% of the population of the world is on Facebook. More than 1.4 billion people. Just think about that. In the past, you couldn't even get a small fraction of that number of people together in the same time and space. And now, the possibility is there for 20% of the population of the world to be interacting somehow with one another. So, all of these, not just the Frightful Five, but everybody else who's imitating them and working along with them and so on, they all want you to feel like you have a very limited amount of ability to direct your own reality. They want you to feel like you should go and you should become an Apple person, and your Apple ID should be, you should change your name to your Apple ID, not vice versa or whatever, and you should just let Apple manage everything. It's a big brother situation. It's not 1984 anymore. It's even worse. We're in 2016. So rather than do that, take, even if they're small steps, so that you are starting to be your own person. A fine sadhu, one who did not use a cell phone, passed on a few months ago. His name was Swami Gyanananda Giri. He was originally from Switzerland. He moved to India when he was in his early 20s, lived here for 60 years or maybe a little bit more, never left again. And he used to say, everyone is born original, but most people die copies. Everybody is born original, but most people die copies, because most people, they get into some kind of not satsanga, but some sort of kusanga. They simply start imitating what's happening around them. They get into ruts. and they lose their vitality, because wherever your attention goes, your prana goes. And the more different directions your prana is going in, the more diffuse your prana becomes. The more diffuse your prana becomes, the more your vata increases. Because really the only difference between prana and vata is that prana is focused, prana is able to circulate to all parts of the body homogeneously, prana moves slowly, prana moves regularly, and prana moves very deeply in the organism. Vata is very superficial. Vata gets concentrated in certain areas and deficient in other areas. And vata is the kind of start and stop, become disturbed, become excited, become something else in all different directions, all the time, all day long. So you have a choice all day, every day, as to whether you want to permit yourself to have your energy dragged out of you by all of these things that are trying to attract your attention, or whether you want to make sure that you're holding on to the majority of your attention and the majority of your energy, and you are willfully permitting your attention to go in a direction that, if it's not always the best thing for you, at least is not the worst thing for you either, and you're limiting the amount of attention, and therefore prana, that you allow to exit from your organism at any one moment. And on that note, I note that, time is not only marching along, it has marched well along. I was told that it would be prudent for me to permit questions from the floor, and now is a good time for that to occur. Om Namah Shivaya. And if there are no questions, I'll continue to rant.
So we have a mic here, if anybody wants to ask a question.
There was Swami Gyananand was very fond of singing. He used to say that you have to pay with your Shakti for every word you say, but singing is free, because it's a different way, it's a different mode of using your organism. And thank you. He was very fond of one song that goes this way. Jaya Hanumana Ati Balavana Ramanama Rasiyare Prabhu Manna Basiyare. We'll come back to that in a moment. First question.
Yeah. It's out of curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity.
Just going back to the point where you kind of build up prayatna and kripa, the two points that you started with. My question to you is regarding this this specific branch of Ayurveda, which tries to connect astrology as well. And probably that's where we see the focus is more on kripa rather than yatna or prayatna. So if you could tell something more about that.
One thing that I have noticed, I mean, there are many things I've noticed, but one thing I've noticed is that there's a big difference, and you understand I'm generalizing here, but there's a big difference between the way that people, and I'm generalizing here to India, the way that people in India think about fate, and the way that people in America think about fate. In America, especially in the so-called New Age, everybody believe, well, not everybody, many people believe that as soon as you as soon as you decide to do something different, as soon as you decide to change your fate, automatically your fate should change. And many people over here believe that your fate is written on your forehead and you will never be able to escape from it, and whatever is written is going to be there, and therefore there's no hope whatsoever, and you may as well forget it. There's been a debate about this in India for many centuries. In fact, it's written in the Charaka Samhita that, and we're talking about a book that was originally written somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 years ago. The version we have now dates from about 400 AD. It said that there were certain people back at that time, certain so-called authorities, who said that if you have a disease, it is because of your bad karma, and you should endure that bad karma and not try to treat the disease, because that way you're working through your bad karma, and then in your next janma, maybe things will be better. And then the author of the Charaka Samhita said, it is true that this is one approach, but the reality is that it may be in your fate, according to your karma, that you have a disease. But what if it is in your fate, according to your karma, that you meet a doctor? Should you say, no, I'm going to hold on to the karmas that have caused me to have the disease and ignore the doctor, even though it was also in your karma to meet the doctor? Or are you going to say, now, even though I have the disease, I have met the doctor, I'm going to try what the doctor suggests. Perhaps it will give me some relief. So the variety of Jyotisha that I follow suggests that there are actually 3 different degrees of karma. Drida karma, adrida karma, and drida karma. So drida karma, and you can identify this in a Janma Kundali, in a horoscope. Drida karma is in fact karma that is fated, and it's not likely you're going to change it in this lifetime. Adrida karma is karma that is not fixed. Drida means stuck. Drida means solid. It is not fixed or solid. It is that's an area of life in which you will be able to change, kind of like the New Age people suggest, with possibly not much more than your determination to change. And there is a category in between called drida karma, which means it's fixed, but it's not completely fixed yet. You painted the wall, but the paint is not completely dry. Your wife came in and said, oh my God, that's the most horrible looking color I've ever seen. If you don't change the color right now, I'm divorcing you. And then you think, okay. And then you rush out to the paint store and you get some more paint and you apply it, and the wall is now a different color, the marriage is saved, everything is okay. But in order to do that, you had to go to the paint store, you had to spend some more money, you had to come back, you had to do some more mehnat. More yatna and prayatna was necessary, but you got the result. So there are said to be, according to the type of Jyotish that I follow, 3 possible qualities of adrishta or a vidatha or whatever, or nasib or kismat or whatever you want to call it. Some that is fated, some that is not fated, and some that is going to be fated unless you do something serious about it right now. So, in the context, this applies also to the context of your health. There may be certain conditions that, according to your previous karmas, you are not going to be able to completely eliminate. In which case, you may have to manage them for however long you can manage them. But that does mean that very possibly you can manage them. There may be other conditions that have simply come because you were doing things that you shouldn't do and not doing things you should do. And when you change those things, they may disappear automatically. And there may be others that you can get rid of, but you're going to have to do some work on. In Ayurveda, we talk about these as prognoses, whether a disease is sadhya or not. And there is sukha sadhya, easily treatable and curable. Krutra sadhya means, just like the word sounds, krutra. You have to, it's harder, you have to work harder, but you can cure it. Yapya, which means you can't cure it, but you can manage it. And asadhya, which means it's incurable. So in Ayurveda, we have 4, instead of 3, we have 4 different qualities of stuckness of the disease. And that means that efforts can be made for the first 3, and for the last one, if it's incurable and not even treatable, then that just means that you have to acknowledge that, live with that reality, and find out the best way to live for however long it is that you have remaining. So there's always something that can be done, even if it is composing yourself and being prepared to die. That's also something that needs to be done. And unfortunately, that many people don't do when it becomes obvious that that's what they need to do. Next.
I just want to understand easily the mapping between the sattva, rajas, tamas and the vata, pitta, shleshma connections.
Well, it's a nice question. And if it was easy to map, somebody would have done it already. So the first thing to think about is that you're familiar with the Sankhya Darshana?
Yeah.
So according to Sankhya, we have Purusha, Prakriti, Mahat or Buddhi, Ahankara, and then Ahankara is divided into Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas.
Yes.
Vata, Pitta, and Kapha are much more stula. They're much more dense and solid and gross. And they exist at the level of Kapha exists because of the necessity to have Prithvi and Ap, earth and water, work together in the context of the living tissue. And Pitta, in order to cause fire and water to work together. And Vata, as a result of the need to get Vayu and Akasha, space and air, to work together. So they are all working at the level of the Panchamahabhutas. So the Panchamahabhutas are evolutes of the Panchatanmatras. And the Panchatanmatras are evolutes of Tamas. So that means, from the perspective of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, all 3 doshas have evolved from Tamas. So all 3 doshas fundamentally are due to Tamas, which is a useful thing to remember. All 5 of the Panchamahabhutas, all 5 of the elements in the world, are fundamentally evolved from Tamas. That means every time that you use your sense organs, and yes, your sense organs are evolved from Sattva, but every time you use your sense organs, you are using your sense organ to connect to something that is fundamentally filled with Tamas. Every time you use your sense organ, therefore, you are taking Tamas into your body. The more you use your sense organs, the more you are taking Tamas into your body. And that tamas will manifest itself as vata or pitta or kapha or a combination of 2 or 3 of them according to what else is going on in your system. So first of all 3 doshas, tamas. Next, all 3 doshas can be sattvic or rajasi or tamasi. You can have sattva kapha, you can have rajas kapha, and you can have tamas kapha. Tamas kapha is the person who lies on the charpai all day long and who is doing nothing except makhi marana until makhi marana is too much work also. That is tamas kapha. And then rajas kapha is not so common, but that's the person who is a hard worker, likes to work, and is able to work because they are strongly built. Sattva kapha is also not so common because that's the kapha person, but like Vaidyananal, someone who is who has learned a vidya and who has become a repository of that vidya, who is able to teach, but also really who is embodying that vidya in a very strong and stable way. In the case of sattva pitta, that means you have a good amount of tejas in your system. The more there's sattva of kapha, you have plenty of ojas. The more there's sattva of pitta, you have more tejas and less pitta. Rajasa, the pitta with a lot of rajas, that person is always moving around, very focused, very doing this, doing that, not very stable. And pitta with a lot of tamas, this is a dictator. Mao Zedong, Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Joseph Stalin, because they're very focused, they're very active, but they will never change their minds unless they decide to change their minds. You can cooperate with them or they will kill you. That's pitta with lots of tamas. Vata with tamas we'll come to in a moment. Vata with sattva, this means prana, because the prana is the thing that creates life in the body. And life in the body means there is chaitanyata in the pancha mahabhutas. That's why we say when someone dies, panchatvam gataha. The person has gone back to 5-ness. They no longer have chaitanyata, they no longer have life in them. All that is left is the 5 mahabhutas. Rajasa vata is very common. The person runs around, as we say in the United States, like a chicken with its head chopped off. And I don't know if you've ever seen that, but the chicken still has a lot of energy in its body, and it runs around after the head has been chopped off. And there are many people are doing this nowadays. They're running around not knowing why they're running around, but they're running around because they have so much energy they can't stop running around. And it may be running around physically, or it may be running around mentally, or something else, but it's just running around without any focus, without any aim. And the tamas aspect of vata happens when a person, without a lot of consciousness, and often because of some unconscious process, finds a way to develop stability in the context of all this nervous energy that is forcing them to run around. But what they do is they find one area in their life in which they become completely rigid, and they use that rigidity to provide stability. But it's not healthy stability, it's rigidity. And you see this in people who have lots of nervous energy. They find something that they're completely, that they're mentally they're stuck on, they're bigoted about, they're rigid about, because that gives them something that they hold on to, even though it's a focus that is not ultimately healthy for them. That's the tamas aspect of vata.
Thank you.
Can you talk about the role of breathing in regulating the degree to which the external environment around you impacts?
Well, breathing is the one thing that we have to do several times every minute. Breathing is something that we sleep periodically, we have to eat occasionally, but we have to breathe. So this is, practically speaking, the one thing that we can employ to influence ourselves on a moment-by-moment basis. And there are, if you study breathing carefully, you will find that there is a lot that you can do with your breathing. There is that extremely excellent science of breathing called Shiva Svoboda. Unfortunately, there are not very many good books about Svoboda, which is a sad thing because you would think that people would have understood that the employing Svoboda was a good thing. But in any event, the place to begin with is the concepts that are extremely basic. And the most basic concept is the more regular your breathing is, the more regular will be the circulation of the energy in your system, which means the more regular your system will be, which means the more balanced it will be, because the system likes to be balanced, and balance happens when there is regularity, when there is even movement of things that need to move evenly. So the first thing is pay attention to your breath. When it is no longer regular, regularize it again. Do not start off by holding your breath. Don't read something that says, hi, we'll do the pranayama where I inhale for 4, count of 4, and exhale for a count of 2, and hold for a count of 1. No, stop. Inhale to begin with for the same amount. Exhale to begin with for the same amount. Do not become complicated. Number 1 is regularity. Number 2 is depth. Always make sure that you are breathing down into your abdomen. It is very easy to breathe up here, but if you breathe up here, you will not be exchanging the gases that need to breathe, and you will not be balancing, you will not be basing, you will not be focusing your prana deep enough in your organism. Always breathe from this area down below your navel, in your abdomen. Breathe with the muscle that is meant for you to breathe with, which is your diaphragm. Breathe regularly, breathe deeply, and breathe slowly. We live in a very fast world, and the faster the world around goes, the faster the world around us is, the slower we have to be. So walking slowly, talking slowly, doing things slowly, this is a good way to increase the slow guna in your organism to counteract the fast guna outside. But if you do your work slowly, the boss is going to come and bitch at you. And why? Why should you listen to that? So do your work as fast as you have to, but breathe slowly. Do not hold your breath, do not restrain your breath, but keep slowing, keep your focus on slowing down your breath so it is slow as possible. It will be easier to slow down your breath if you are breathing deeply. It will be easier to breathe deeply if you're breathing regularly. Regularly, slowly, deeply. This is the place to begin. Thank you for asking that question. And now we have 5 minutes left, and during this time we're going to do something practical, which is to sing, because singing automatically encourages the prana to circulate properly. That's why for all this time we had the Vedas and the Puranas and everything else. And even if you don't have the Vedas and the Puranas, thank God we have people like Jnaneshwar Maharaj and Tukaram Babu and Maharshi Tulsidas, who have converted things from Sanskrit into the vernacular languages. And even if you're not interested in that stuff, we have all kinds of other music and songs. And even if you like There's even, like Beju Bara, there is even good things that you can, Tum Ganga Ki Maujame Jamuna Kadara. So many beautiful things to sing. You don't have to waste your time paying for all of these words that you have to pay for. Instead, you can sing and not have to pay for it and have good results. And who better to sing for than Hanumanji, because he is the incarnation of Lord Shiva, which means at the least he will give you a good death, if not keep you alive as long as you need to be. But in addition to that, don't forget that he is also the son of the god of wind, which means he is the incarnation of Prana himself. So if you worship Hanuman, basically what you're doing is worshiping your own Prana and encouraging it to focus on Rama, which means the supreme reality, that it will not get diverted by anything else, and therefore good things will happen to you. Om Namah Shivaya. Therefore, repeat after me. Jaya Hanumana, Jaya Hanumana, Ati Ballavana, Ati Ballavana, Ramanam Rasiyare, Ramanam Rasiyare, Prabhu Manabasiyare, Prabhu Manabasiyare. Good. You're learning it very quickly. Let's not waste any more time. Jaya Hanumana Ati Ballavana Ramanam Rasiyare Prabhu Manabasiyare. 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 Lokas samastas sukhino bhavantu. Lokas samastas sukhino bhavantu. Lokas samastas sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Brahmarpanam Astu. Om